Hey everybody. Welcome back to Ellie Marie Church writing my writing page. Sorry, I don't need GI. It's been a long day. I told you guys that I'd get back on this week and talk a little bit more about Preptober, and so that's what I'm here to do. Specifically, I'm here to talk to you about Character Week. So I have, like I talked about last time, I have 3 weeks left in October for Preptober. And that gives me 3 things to focus on. This week is going to be characters for my novel that I will be working on for NaNoWriMo. Next week will be location. And then the final week will be plotting. Now, we're not going to be doing detailed plotting, but it's going to be kind of overarching plotting because obviously you can't do huge, heavy detail and plotting in a week. But this week is characters. So I thought I would talk a little bit about my character development routine. This is super informal. I haven't really planned what I'm going to say for this. Sorry, I'm going to adjust my camera because I feel like there's a lot of white space above my head. There still is. It's whatever. So I just thought I'd go over briefly about how I kind of develop characters and how I begin with characters. And then I'll get on again later this week and I'll talk a little bit about some of the characters that are going to be in my novel. And hopefully you guys will enjoy it. So, and feedback, I would love feedback. If any of you watch this video and you've got feedback for me in regards to what I talk about, please don't hesitate to let me know. So, characters for me are actually the easy part, at least in general, of story developing and of getting together a story idea, whether it's for a novel or a short story or fan fiction. For those of you who know me well, you know I write fan fiction. A lot of times my stories actually start with characters. I don't really start with a plot. I don't really start with a place. I have on occasion, but that's rare. Usually I start with characters. Usually I have a character or two that I really like, and I'm like, I have these characters, where would they live? And then that's where the world developing comes in. And based on these characters' personalities and what I know about them, what do they do? And that then develops more of the plot and like where they reside in the plot. For instance, this particular plot that I'm working on started with 2 characters. It started with a male character and a female character, and it started with the idea of having a male character who was essentially a dark elf. They aren't called that, but they are essentially the basic concept of a drow. If you are familiar with fantasy fiction, drow are they come from Norse mythology. They're dark elves. So like if you think of the Marvel comics, because that's how everybody relates to fantasy and stuff these days. They're like from, I think it's Elfenheim, Henheim, where they have like the dark skin and they, anyway, moving on. That's where the idea of drow came from, in dark elves. And so you have a male dark elf character, and then you have this female character who is essentially human, in the very basic sense of the term. She's not human in that they come from Earth, because the setting ended up being not Earth and not here, but she is essentially human. She's not a fantastical creature of some other kind. She's not an orc, she's not an elf, she's not a gnome, she's not a dwarf. She's essentially a human. She's actually called a skrit, is the species, quote unquote, that I have come up with for them. They are human. They're just not humans like we see humans. They're a little bit different, but so it started with these 2 characters, and for me it was their interaction with each other. That's kind of what sparked this idea for this novel, and it was the idea of them coming from 2 very different stations in life and from 2 different backgrounds in life, but being attracted to one another, being drawn to one another. Initially that wasn't necessarily in a romantic sense, although it has since kind of evolved into that, because those of you who know me, everything ends up being romantic with me. I don't know why. It's just my thing. I deeply love romance. But anyway, and so that's kind of where the story came from. It started with these 2 characters. It started with the main character who was a dark elf, and then I had this other female main character who was a skrit, a human at the time. I hadn't come up with skrit yet, but she was a human, and it just kind of went from there. It kind of evolved from there. What would a society look like? What would this world that they live in look like? What would the plot be for this? And actually, for me, the plot came last, which sounds funny because that's what the novel is a plot, but it was characters and then location and then plot, which is part of why I'm presenting them to you in that way. So, but yeah, characters for me tend to kind of be the first thing that I come up with when I'm coming up with a story idea. Again, either short story or novel or fan fiction. And they slowly evolve. They slowly become more well-rounded and more well-rounded and more well-rounded the more I think about them. And the way I kind of force them to be more evolved characters is I put them in different situations in my head that may or may not have anything to do with the plot. Like, what would they do if they were stuck on an island together? What would they do if they couldn't see each other anymore? What would they do if they switched places? That kind of stuff. And it kind of brings out these little idiosyncrasies that you don't really think about normally for characters. So that's a good character practice if you are ever wanting to develop characters and you can't think of anything. Go out and find a writing prompt and take your character and shove them in the writing prompt, and you'll learn new things about your character. So yeah, that's my basics about characters. Characters tend to be, again, like I said, just they're where I start, and they're easiest for me, which I don't know, could end up meaning that my characters are not well-rounded, that they're two-dimensional, but we'll find out. I'll write this novel, some of you will read it, and you'll let me know. So, yeah, so that was where characters begin for me, and that's kind of how I grow my characters and how I see my characters within the whole of the story. So I will get on later, probably Wednesday, to talk a little bit more about my two main characters, and then probably again on Friday to talk about some of the minor characters in the story. So, and I don't know, I might post some stuff this week. I might post some character profiles and some other things for you guys to look at a little bit. So, yeah. Anyway, it was nice to get on and talk to you guys for a little bit. I've been thinking kind of all weekend about what I wanted to talk about, and I think it went well. So, I look forward to hearing from you guys, and I will talk to y'all later. Bye.